The pianist hasn't arrived yet. This was a high-end restaurant aboard a luxurious cruise ship. Tonight was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to welcome a very special guest. The restaurant was fully booked, and the air was thick with tension. Yet, the star of the evening, the pianist, was nowhere to be seen, even past the promised time. What should we do? The woman in charge hunched her shoulders, lowering her head. She was usually composed and dignified, but seeing her like this only heightened the staff's anxiety. There's no one who can replace him. Her trembling voice trailed off, and the restaurant fell into silence. I stepped forward, breaking that silence. I'll play. What are you saying? She lifted her head. Her gaze, filled with shock and confusion, was fixed on me. I want to protect this restaurant. Please let me do it. My name is Mason. I'm in my mid-40s, working as a part-time janitor on this cruise ship. I didn't take this job for any special reason. It wasn't because I loved the ocean or had some grand admiration for ships. I simply wanted a quiet place where I could work without too much interaction with people. The work was repetitive, but that suited me just fine. Every day, I simply cleaned my assigned area. That area happened to be the ship's most popular restaurant. Known for its luxurious decor and world-class cuisine, it had been featured on TV and in magazines numerous times. The guests were usually refined, quietly enjoying their meals like they were part of a painting. Of course, not everyone was so well-mannered. Some people would glance at me with disdain, treating me as nothing more than a janitor. At those times, I felt the urge to sigh, but I reminded myself, I still like this job, and kept my hands moving. Despite being surrounded by grandeur, I could remain in the background, keeping a comfortable emotional distance. This restaurant had one particularly special feature. A magnificent grand piano sat in the center of the room. Every evening, a dedicated pianist would perform live. Their melodies enveloped the entire restaurant, elevating the dining experience to something extraordinary. As I worked, I would listen to the music. It felt as if my movements blended into the sound, making me feel, if only for a moment, like I was part of the scene. There was one person who always treated me kindly. The restaurant's manager, Henry. He was probably just past 60. He carried an air of dignity without being intimidating, always greeting those around him with a warm and gentle smile. Even to me, a janitor, he would always say, "Thank you for your hard work," without any hint of discrimination. One day, I overheard the restaurant staff discussing plans for Henry's upcoming birthday in the break room. Is this bouquet okay? But Henry loves wine, so maybe that would be better. Hearing their excited chatter, I found myself stopping in my tracks, still holding my cleaning tools. I, too, felt a deep sense of gratitude toward Henry. And because of that, I wanted to express it in some way, even if it was just a small gesture. Summoning my courage, I finally spoke up. Could I join in on the celebration as well? I could hear the tremor in my own voice. Even so, my desire to show my appreciation for Henry gave me the strength to push the words out. The staff looked surprised for a moment, but then they quickly smiled and replied, "Of course," without hesitation. At that moment, I felt a small warmth spread in my chest. My work was mostly solitary, and I had always avoided getting too involved with others. But every time I found myself in this atmosphere surrounding Henry, I couldn't help but admit that I was truly lonely. And that made me even more grateful to Henry. It was because of him that I could still feel some connection to others. But then, tragedy struck. Henry passed away suddenly. It was a heart condition. The entire ship was engulfed in sorrow. The staff were at a loss for words, unable to focus on their work for a while. I cried too. Wiping my tears with my sleeve, I kept cleaning. Even after Henry was gone, I didn't want to let the restaurant fall into a gloomy atmosphere. because I knew Henry would never have wanted that. Seeing me continue working, the other staff members slowly began to move forward as well. "Let's carry on the way Henry would have wanted," with a smile, someone said. Everyone nodded in agreement. And then, a few weeks after Henry's passing, his granddaughter, Olivia, arrived on the ship as the new restaurant manager. "Nice to meet you. I'm Olivia. Thank you for everything you've done for my grandfather." The first time I saw her, I was struck by her beauty. But more than that, there was a quiet strength in her eyes, something she had undoubtedly inherited from her grandfather. The day Olivia stepped into the restaurant, a young man stood beside her. He was strikingly handsome with a quiet, reserved presence. He stood as if he were merely part of the scenery, showing no sign of being conscious of the attention around him. Looking at him, Olivia spoke in a clear voice. "This is Samuel. He'll be playing the piano from today. Please welcome him." The young man, Samuel, gave a small nod and introduced himself in a calm, composed voice. "I'm Samuel. It's a pleasure to meet you." His voice was low and steady, understated yet strangely memorable. Though everyone was trying to stay positive, the loss of Henry had cast a lingering shadow over the restaurant. Many of the pianists who worked exclusively for him admired Henry, and after his sudden departure, several of them quit, saying that they couldn't go on. That was why Olivia had brought Samuel as the new pianist. That night, the restaurant was more dazzling than ever. Pristine white tablecloths adorned the tables, candlelight flickered against the glassware, creating a delicate dance of reflections. The rich aroma of exquisitely prepared dishes filled the air. The gentle glow of the chandeliers wrapped the entire dining area in a warm, comforting light. Then the room was suddenly darkened, and a single spotlight illuminated the grand piano. At that moment, the hushed murmurs of the guests faded into silence. Samuel slowly took a seat at the piano, taking a deep breath. Every movement he made was striking, like an actor stepping onto the stage for a performance. His expression remained calm and serene, yet a faint tension flickered in his eyes, as if the piano itself was breathing in sync with him. With every touch of his fingertips on the keys, it felt as though the music was flowing straight from his soul. The sound was deep, transparent, like the rippling of a lake when a single drop of water falls upon its surface. It painted landscapes within the silence, the whisper of the wind, a distant sunset, the vast stretch of a quiet meadow underfoot. His music created an entire world, pulling everyone into its embrace. In the corner of the kitchen, I placed the garbage bag I had been holding down. I was completely captivated. Amid the bustling night, the moment his fingers touched the keys, time itself seemed to stop. The melody touched something deep in my chest. It wasn't just sound, but raw, living emotion. The guests felt it too. The clinking of knives and forks against plates gradually faded as they focused not on their meals, but on the music filling the air. It was as if we were all experiencing the same story together. When the piece ended, a brief silence hung in the air. Then, in the very next moment, a wave of applause erupted. Voices rose from every corner of the room. That was incredible. One more song, their joy blending seamlessly with the lingering echoes of his performance. That was amazing, I muttered without thinking, overwhelmed by the sheer brilliance of Samuel's playing. His music continued through the night, and slowly, the restaurant came back to life. As Samuel played, Olivia stood at the center of the restaurant, giving out instructions. Her voice was composed, conveying only what was necessary, allowing the staff to move without hesitation. Refill the drinks sooner. Be careful when carrying out the next dish. Her timing and precision were flawless. Inside the restaurant, her guidance created a harmonious flow. Combined with Samuel's performance, it transformed the entire place into a special space. She carried herself with an air of detachment, rarely adding unnecessary words. She didn't smile often, and her interactions with the staff were strictly professional. She wasn't cold, but there was a certain distance in the way she carried herself. Still, her keen observation and sharp judgment were undeniable. She noticed even the smallest details, addressing potential issues before they could arise, which likely reassured the staff rather than intimidating them. Even when someone made a mistake, she would simply say, "You might want to adjust this a bit," offering a solution with calm precision. Her straight-backed posture and swift, efficient movements exuded a quiet authority, earning her the trust and respect of those around her. After Henry's passing, she has admirably fulfilled the heavy role of managing and supporting the entire restaurant. Even if she doesn't smile much, there is a certain warmth in her demeanor, conveying her strong determination to keep the restaurant thriving. One day, as I was cleaning, Olivia suddenly spoke to me. "You're always here, cleaning this restaurant, aren't you?" Caught off guard, I quickly replied, "Yes, this is my assigned area." She tilted her head slightly. "Have you ever thought about doing something else?" Her question made me freeze for a moment. I was about to say, "This job suits me," but then the memory of Henry's birthday celebration resurfaced. The feeling of being part of something, of choosing a gift together with the staff, of sharing in the moment. I remembered how those small interactions had lit a quiet warmth inside me. For most of my life, I had avoided getting too involved with others. In that sense, being a janitor, a job where I could work alone in silence, had seemed like the perfect fit. But that day, when I joined the staff in celebrating Henry, I had felt something I hadn't in a long time. I had felt connected. Looking back, I realized I had convinced myself that being alone was easier. That by telling myself that, I had been suppressing something inside me all along. I do want to connect with people. I want to try something new. For some reason, standing before Olivia, I wanted to voice that feeling. But saying it out loud was harder than I expected, and I lowered my gaze. Seeing me hesitate, Olivia spoke, "You seem like you'd get along with floor staff member." Her words made me snap my head up in surprise. Because I remembered Henry had once told me the exact same thing. "You have good posture, unlike the other cleaning staff who are always hunched over." I was taken aback by Olivia's sharp observation. She might appear cold, but she was surprisingly perceptive. "You didn't start here as a fresh graduate, did you? What was your previous job? I want to place people where they belong. Is there a position you'd rather be in?" Under the weight of her unwavering gaze, I searched for an answer. Her piercing yet resolute eyes suddenly reminded me of Henry. He, too, had a quiet strength in his gaze. "No, I think I'll just stay like this. No, actually. If I ever gain the confidence, I'd like to work under you." Olivia's eyes widened slightly at my words, but her expression quickly returned to normal, as if she was masking any reaction. I see. Well, we're always short on staff, so just let me know when you're ready." She averted her gaze as she spoke. For some reason, it almost seemed like she was embarrassed. She can make a face like that? It's different from her usual demeanor. Kind of cute. For the first time, I felt a small sense of familiarity with Olivia. A few days later, after Samuel had already established himself as a celebrated pianist in the restaurant, he approached me. "Oh, do you have a thing for that beauty?" He smirked, looking at me with amusement. Samuel often had a sharp tongue, especially toward the restaurant staff, and he had absolutely no mercy for someone like me, a janitor. Like someone like her would never look your way. "Do you even know your place?" His words carried an unnecessary sting. I forced a chuckle, but irritation bubbled inside me. Yet his talent was undeniable. His performances had drawn in more customers than ever, pushing the restaurant's sales to record highs. In a way, Samuel had saved the restaurant. And because of that, no one dared to call him out on his attitude. He knew it, too. It was obvious he was getting cocky. "You probably dropped out of high school. No, middle school, maybe? Though, if you actually graduated college and still ended up as a janitor, that'd be even more pathetic." Samuel's words, spoken with a laugh, made me want to clench my fists, but I pretended to stay calm and went back to work. An old man like you isn't needed, not just here, but anywhere in the world. As I passed by and heard those words, a surge of anger made me want to destroy everything in sight, but I simply kept working. Then, a major announcement shook the restaurant. A famous celebrity, Travis, was coming to dine here, bringing a crowd of high-profile executives and public figures with him. The moment his name was mentioned, the staff gasped in shock. "Travis is coming. I can't believe I get to see him up close," I heard voices exclaiming. Even the normally composed staff were visibly excited. Travis was a star. Even I felt a brief surge of anticipation at the thought of seeing him in person. Amid the rising excitement, Olivia stood before the entire staff, her voice strong and commanding. "This is an opportunity to elevate not just this restaurant, but the reputation of the entire ship. We must deliver our best service and make this a success." There was no hesitation in her voice. She was always calm and composed, but now her sharp gaze burned with determination. That look alone conveyed her unwavering resolve to make this night flawless. Her presence immediately refocused the staff. Straightening their backs, they nodded and got to work. Discussions filled the air. What kind of table arrangements should we go for? What kind of dishes would impress him the most? The kitchen and dining floor bustled with activity, everyone moving with a shared sense of purpose. For the first time, it felt like the entire restaurant was truly united toward a single goal. Even Samuel changed. Late at night, after the restaurant had closed, he sat at the piano, practicing with intense concentration. His fingers moved with absolute precision, sweat forming on his forehead. Some staff sighed as they watched him. If only he'd always be this serious about the piano and not everything else. He has this side to him. What could have made him so bitter? As I looked at Samuel, a thought suddenly crossed my mind. And a few days later, I found my answer. That evening, one of the restaurant's former resident pianists came in as a guest. He was a pianist who had worked alongside Henry in the past, someone who had often spoken to me as well. Seeing him again with his gentle demeanor and the way he was warmly greeted by the staff and guests, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. "It's been a while, Mason. How have you been?" He smiled softly as he spoke, and we exchanged casual conversation for a while. When the topic of Henry came up, his face briefly clouded with sadness, but he quickly shook it off and glanced around the restaurant. "Oh, is that him?" His gaze landed on Samuel. "I didn't expect this. So Samuel is playing here now?" He went on to tell me Samuel's story. Samuel had been recognized as a child prodigy, appearing on television and earning widespread acclaim as a young pianist. However, when he entered a prestigious music academy, he found himself surrounded by musicians even more talented than him. Slowly, he began to fade into the background. Overwhelmed by frustration, he entered a major competition, but his nerves got the best of him, leading to multiple mistakes. That failure crushed his dreams of an international career. And yet, he never stopped playing. That fact alone struck me deeply. Even after his pride was shattered, he still kept going. Even Samuel's cynical attitude seemed understandable when I considered the emotional scars he carried. His passion for the piano and his lonely figure, burdened with a fragile pride, conveyed an indescribable strength. If anything, it even seemed almost dazzling. And finally, the day came when we would welcome Travis. The restaurant was fully prepared, and the staff's morale had never been higher. Everyone was so caught up in their tasks that no one noticed Samuel wasn't there. Since he always approached the piano just before his performance, no one found it strange if he was nowhere to be seen during the preparation stage. The staff naturally assumed he would arrive on time. "Samuel isn't here yet?" The moment those words were spoken, the air in the restaurant froze. The staff, who had been moving with such focus, halted and exchanged uneasy glances. Expressions of confusion and concern spread rapidly. "Wait, He's still not here? You're kidding, right? Whispers filled the room, but the clock kept ticking, mercilessly moving forward. The reservation time was almost upon us, but Samuel was nowhere to be found. The piano bench sat empty. A creeping panic spread through the staff. He's not answering his phone. It's possible he slipped away and left the ship. The report made Olivia bury her head in her hands. She, who always carried herself with such authority, now had her shoulders hunched. It was a stark contrast to her usual composed self. Every other pianist had prior engagements tonight. There was no one to take his place. At this rate, not only would the restaurant's reputation be ruined, but Henry's beloved establishment itself could be in jeopardy. Would we really let it end like this? As the suffocating mix of anxiety and despair filled the air, my eyes fell on Olivia's slumped figure. At that moment, something hot surged inside me. Now. It has to be now. Henry's smile flashed through my mind. I stood up. Without hesitation, I stepped forward, pushing aside my doubt, and addressed her firmly. Can I borrow a suit? What? Olivia turned to me, her eyes filled with uncertainty, on the verge of tears. I straightened my back and met her gaze head-on. I can play. Maybe not as well as Samuel, but I can play any song you need. Her eyes widened in shock. As I met her gaze, my heart remained strangely calm. The other restaurant staff also stared at me in shock, but eventually Olivia gave a small nod and said, "Well then," as she hesitantly held out Samuel's outfit. Seeing her trembling hands, my resolve hardened. As I slipped my arms into the sleeves, I was surprised at how perfectly the outfit fit me. After changing, I stopped in my tracks as I caught my reflection in the mirror. The person standing there was the performer I had long forgotten. I stepped onto the stage, pouring everything into the keys. Memories of the past came rushing back, whether I wanted them to or not. But just as my chest began to burn with emotion, a sudden wave of anxiety swept over me. That celebrity, they might recognize Samuel's face. If someone in the audience knew Samuel, they would see right through my act. Just that alone could ruin the restaurant's reputation. At that moment, my eyes landed on a mask displayed on the restaurant's wall. This is it. With this, I can hide my identity. I asked the staff to bring me the mask and quietly placed it over my face. The figure in the mirror was no longer just a janitor. Nor was he merely Samuel's stand-in. I was simply a performer willing to risk everything for the sake of playing. As the tension in the room thickened, I stepped onto the stage in silence. I could feel every gaze on me, even through the mask. I took a deep breath, struggling to calm my racing heartbeat. Resting my hands on the keys, I saw the sheet music of the song Samuel had planned to perform. I steadied my breathing and with firm resolve played the first note. In that instant, the atmosphere in the hall shifted. The sound filled the space, rippling outward like waves. With every movement of my fingers, the melody took form, and I found myself enveloped in its embrace. This is my life. No matter how far I try to stray from it, the piano will always be a part of me. The feeling rising from deep within me was beyond words. It was neither joy nor sorrow, but something overwhelming that completely consumed me. My fingertips burned with passion as I poured everything into each note. Right now, I was no longer just a janitor. I was a performer through and through. And as the final note faded into silence, the hall was engulfed in a deep, breathless stillness. For just a moment, everyone seemed to hold their breath. Then, a thunderous applause erupted, filling the entire hall. I stood up and bowed deeply. Beneath the mask, I felt warm tears trickling down my cheeks. With every clap of the audience, the doubts and struggles of my past seemed to dissolve little by little. After the performance, Olivia guided me to her private room. The room was neat and orderly, with a serene view of the ocean stretching beyond the window. You, you were a pianist, weren't you? And not just any pianist, a remarkable one. Olivia looked at me intently as she spoke in a quiet voice. Avoiding her gaze, I stared out the window and slowly began to recount my past. I was once a pianist known as a prodigy. After graduating from a prestigious music school, I started performing overseas, building a successful career. Glamorous stages, roaring applause, endless offers pouring in. It was the very life I had dreamed of. But then, in an instant, it all came crashing down. The woman I had been in love with stole every penny I had. Unaware, I had entrusted her with all my living expenses, only to wake up one day and find her gone. With the help of the police, she was eventually caught, but most of the money was never recovered. When I learned she had squandered it on luxury and another man, something inside me shattered. Losing the money wasn't the hardest part. Being betrayed was. Even now, I remember that feeling of loss with painful clarity. Being betrayed by someone you trust leaves a scar deeper than anything else. That was when it started. My hatred for money itself. Every time I played the piano to earn a living, I thought, it's because of this that I was hurt. Gradually, making money became meaningless. No matter how much I earned, my heart never felt full. Eventually, I couldn't even bear to look at a piano. My fingers felt heavy on the keys and playing music became suffocating. And so, as if running away from a life tied to the piano, I returned to Japan. I wandered the streets aimlessly, and one day I stopped by a small standing soba shop for the first time in years. That's when I noticed a job ad on the wall. Ship janitor wanted. Exhausted, the word strangely appealed to me. I had nowhere to go, and since I could speak English, I figured I might get hired easily. So I applied right then and there. The interview was just as simple as I expected. I was hired on the spot just because I could speak English. The work was physically demanding, but I didn't have to form deep connections with anyone. And that, more than anything, felt right to me. On payday, when I received my salary in an envelope, I thought, I'm happy to receive money for the first time in a long while. I had hated money so much, but this was different. It was the pure result of my labor. There was no betrayal, no disappointment attached to it. In this job, no one will approach me for my money. This is my true calling. Convincing myself of that, I continued with my new life. No piano, no deep relationships, just quiet, solitary days. I told myself this was how I would live. When I finished recounting my story, Olivia lowered her gaze deep in thought. Then she narrowed her eyes slightly and said, I have a job. As the manager here, I make a decent amount of money every month. Her sudden mention of money caught me off guard. But she continued without hesitation. Do you get it? I have no interest in your money. I already earn my own. The woman who was usually so cold and composed now wore a gentle expression. Then, in a quiet but firm voice, she added, So don't worry, just play the piano. But if I suddenly can't play again, I might cause trouble for you. I hesitated, but she simply chuckled and met my gaze with unwavering eyes. This is a ship in the middle of the ocean. I won't let you pull a stunt like Samuel's. Do you really think you can run away? Then, with absolute conviction, she declared, I fell in love with your piano. I won't let you go. No matter what, I'll protect you. The intensity in her eyes overlapped with the memory of Henry. I should have played for Henry, let him hear me one last time. But he's probably listening from heaven now. Thinking that, I gave her a silent nod. From that day on, I decided to start over as this restaurant's pianist. Even after Samuel, the star, was gone, my piano began to win over the hearts of the guests. Before I knew it, I had reclaimed the part of myself that had once been called a prodigy, and I was finally able to face music again. Then, one day, I noticed a man standing at the edge of the restaurant, watching my performance intently. Dressed in a suit, He wore a composed smile. When my performance ended, he approached me. "That was an incredible performance. A talent like yours shouldn't be confined to a place like this." Saying that, he handed me a business card. Printed on it was the logo of a well-known music company. "Why don't you join our company? We want you to showcase your talent on a bigger stage." There was a firm confidence in his words. Performing on a luxury cruise ship must come with a lot of pressure, right? But if you're going to feel that pressure anyway, wouldn't it be better to experience it on a grand stage? With a smirk, he pulled out a contract and pointed at a number. It was an amount of money I had never seen in my life. The moment I saw it, bitter memories resurfaced. Betrayal, loss, and my fear of money. Yet, strangely, I felt calm. "You've been to this restaurant before, haven't you?" As I said that, the man's expression faltered for a split second. "Yes, I've dined here a few times. Why do you ask?" "You stopped coming right after Samuel disappeared. Didn't you leave the ship with him?" At my words, he gave a faint, knowing smile. "Samuel is performing on the best stage now under our company." He shrugged as he spoke. "We pay musicians what they truly deserve. The music industry is full of exploitative companies, but we're different. Samuel is proof of that. He's making several times what he earned here. Money drives people insane. It did to her, and it did to me." A memory of my former lover's betrayal flashed through my mind. The money I earned through music had driven someone I trusted to ruin me. That fear of money had made me abandon the piano altogether. That memory alone was enough to make me reject the fortune he was offering. In a way, I also lost myself to money. I said quietly, meeting his gaze. "Thank you for the offer, but I'm happy where I am now. This restaurant isn't paying you what your talent is worth. You could be making so much more. Do you really want to stay here?" His words didn't shake me. That may be true. My current earnings aren't much. But if this restaurant continues to grow, my pay will naturally increase as well. The man sighed, then withdrew the contract. Instead, he placed a business card on the table. "If you ever change your mind, give me a call. You have the talent to seize a bigger stage." With one last smile, he turned and walked away. I stared at the business card in front of me, lost in thought. That man had poached Samuel, leading the restaurant to the brink of disaster. But thinking about it from Samuel's perspective, I could understand his choice. The restaurant probably hadn't been able to pay him what he truly deserved. Henry had done his best to offer a fair wage, but it might not have been enough for Samuel to feel properly valued. That was a reality I had to accept. The man's company could pay Samuel what he was worth. If that's the case, maybe it's a good thing for Samuel to keep playing there. I just hoped he wouldn't let himself be consumed by money, playing the piano only for the sake of wealth. That was my only concern. But then I pictured him. Late at night, after the restaurant had closed, practicing tirelessly at the piano. Samuel had always been serious about his craft, and somehow I didn't believe he would lose himself. He will surely be able to keep playing. Samuel was probably told something like this by that man. "This restaurant isn't paying you what you're worth." And Samuel must have thought, "That's right. This place is holding me back. Leaving is the right choice." And he wasn't wrong. Then one night, Samuel returned to the ship just as the restaurant was about to close. He no longer carried himself with the same confidence as before. Instead, he stood at the entrance with a hint of hesitation in his expression. When we called out to him in surprise, Samuel quietly bowed his head. "I sincerely apologize. Please, let me explain why I left." As the staff fell silent, Samuel slowly began to speak. "When I got the offer, I was thrilled. I knew this place couldn't pay me what I was worth, and I thought I'd finally get to perform on a bigger stage. But," he lowered his gaze slightly before continuing, "when I saw the first payment in my bank account, I really believed I must be incredible. But over time, that money started to feel heavy. Every time I thought, do I really deserve this after abandoning everyone? It became suffocating. He let out a deep breath and looked at me straight in the eyes. The money that should have been mine was meant for you instead. With that, he reached into his bag and pulled out a thick brown envelope, extending it toward me. His hands trembled slightly. Please, take this. It's too much for me. I feel like I'm being crushed under its weight. Samuel clutched his head and sank onto the floor. The way he sat there, tormented by his inner conflict, reminded me of myself back when I struggled with money and my love for the piano. I gently pushed the envelope back toward him and spoke calmly. Then quit that company and come back here. The pay will be lower, but if you think you don't deserve that kind of money, this is the perfect place for you. Samuel's eyes widened as he looked at me. At that moment, Olivia quietly stepped forward. Your talent is extraordinary. I once had a band, but we never made it. We just didn't have what it takes. But people like you, real musicians with true talent, should stay in the world of music. Music is something beautiful. Please, share it with the world in my place. She knelt to meet his gaze and spoke gently. Samuel's voice shook. I never thought someone would say that about me. I'm so sorry. I said so many terrible things. I lashed out at everyone. I was selfish. His voice trembled. Gone was the overbearing arrogance he once carried. His downcast eyes and slumped shoulders reflected nothing but sincere regret. After a long silence, Olivia took a step forward, her expression soft yet firm. Welcome back. Her words were gentle, yet they carried undeniable strength. The staff, one by one, followed her lead, offering small nods and smiles. Samuel looked up in surprise, his eyes brimming with tears. Then, with unsteady steps, he moved forward and bowed deeply. From that day on, Samuel returned to the restaurant, playing once more. With him back, the restaurant flourished even more than before. One day, the same man from the music agency that had scouted Samuel returned. He sat leisurely in his seat, listened to our performance, then remarked, "What a shame. You'd think the more money, the better, wouldn't you?" I smiled and asked, "So, how was our performance?" "Your talent is something money can't buy, no matter how much I offer." Well, it was good. With that, he placed another business card on the table and walked out. Samuel stared at the card for a moment before murmuring, "That man didn't drive me insane. My own weakness did." I nodded and told him, "The fact that you've recognized your own weakness and still choose to keep playing means you'll be fine. Just like I am now. Let's keep going together." Samuel smiled and nodded. "Yeah, you're right." Then suddenly, he smirked mischievously. "By the way, anything new with Olivia? Everyone knows about your little date the other day." "What?" I blurted out in panic, but Samuel just grinned and walked off like old times. Left behind, my face burning, I could only watch his retreating back. That guy really hasn't changed at all. Even as I thought that, I couldn't help but feel a small smile forming somewhere deep inside me. Seeing Samuel laugh and joke like before reassured me. His words echoed in my mind. If that ever happens, if my relationship with Olivia progressed to that point, maybe I wouldn't mind asking Samuel to play at the ceremony. A wedding that begins with his piano. It would probably feel a little embarrassing, but warm and beautiful at the same time. I'm deciding on a performer before I've even thought about anything else. As I sat there, lost in thought with my head in my hands, I suddenly heard Olivia's teasing voice behind me. "Hey, what's this business card about?" When I turned toward the teasing voice, Olivia was smiling softly. That smile, it reminded me of Henry. I really wanted him to hear me play, but time doesn't wait for hesitation. So this time, I won't regret my choices. About our next date. I struggled to keep my voice steady, my nerves threatening to betray me. Olivia's eyes widened in surprise for a brief moment, but then a soft smile played on her lips. It was a smile no one else, neither the staff nor the customers, ever got to see. A playful, childlike grin that only I knew. Just then, a sea breeze drifted in from outside, cooling my flushed cheeks. The wind helped soothe my nerves slightly, but the way Olivia looked at me made my heart race all over again. Money sustains our daily lives. It's necessary to chase dreams. But what money truly means depends on the person. For me, money once symbolized betrayal. Ever since that day when my lover stole everything from me, I had resented it. I thought that if I had never had money, I wouldn't have been betrayed. That obsession drove me to abandon the piano and become a janitor. It was a job that minimized human interactions, allowing me to live quietly. For a while, I convinced myself I had found peace. But what I truly needed wasn't solitude. Meeting Henry, losing him, and then reconnecting with Olivia and Samuel made me realize it. What I had always needed was connection. And I had been seeking it all along through music. That fleeting moment when I touch the keys and hearts resonate. When people smile, sometimes cry, and applaud after hearing me play. All of it gave my life meaning. Standing on stage as a performer was the only time I truly felt my own existence. And having people who recognized that existence, that was happiness. Music was my heart. It was my way of expressing myself, but also a bridge to connect with others. When I played, there were no barriers. I was one with the audience. Through music, my inner voice reached them, and their reactions filled me in return. It was something irreplaceable, something I could never experience alone. There are wounds we can't heal by ourselves. There are struggles we can't overcome alone. It was only through the bonds I formed that I found the courage to face the piano again. Reuniting with Samuel deepened that realization. The moment he returned to the ship and openly admitted his weaknesses, I knew. He too had been searching for connection. Humans are weak, but recognizing that weakness and helping each other, that's what makes us human. Olivia's warm words, Samuel's tears, the smiles of the staff and customers, all of it held me up. And now, I too wanted to be someone who could support others. Not living in solitude, but sharing my life with someone. It wouldn't always be easy, there would be pain and conflict. But beyond that, there was warmth and hope. I would prove that music had the power to make that possible. And at the same time, I wanted to keep believing in that power as I moved forward.